Hello and welcome. I am so excited today because we have Katie Kennedy here. And Katie, you are the author of a new book about the Constitution. So show us what it looks like.
This is the Constitution Decoded outside and colorful on the inside here. The illustrator, Ben Kirchner, is English. And since George Washington is our guide, I looked carefully at the final proof to make sure he hadn't given him little horns or something, or some kind of a final payback, you know. So,
sounds like he respected the document.
I think he did, yes.
Yeah, that's important. That's important. So why did you feel like we needed, for middle school, middle grade, that we needed a document to decode the Constitution? What was the impetus for this book?
You know, realistically, most of us don't know the document well. I mean, social studies teachers, that's a rarefied group, right?
Right.
For the general population, even adults don't know the document well. And that's true for students as well. I teach college, and had a student ask, great guy, and no shade at all, but he asked me once if the Constitution requiring that the president be a natural-born citizen meant that he could not be president because his mother had had a C-section with him. Yeah, and so we talked about that, and the class enjoyed that. And I got that question a second time a few years later, and I thought, okay, you know, people really don't understand what the language means.
Yeah.
So the Constitution Decoded was an attempt to give people the tools to be able to understand the document themselves. So we have the original text on a kind of a short piece on the left-hand page, and then a plain language translation on the right hand, simply, and then glossaries and so on, just trying to give students the tools to read the document for themselves and understand what it actually says. So without any kind of partisan spin or advocating anything, just this is what the document says.
And I think one thing that you do really well in this is you provide historical context, because what was important to the framers may not be quite the same frame of reference that we would have now. So, yeah.
The first draft had quite a bit of, I went a little crazy with my sidebars, and my editor had to point out it's not supposed to be a 900-page book, which, you know, but I had fun. But there were things.
There's another volume.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, the things like that James Madison had a frostbite scar on his nose, I thought that was pertinent information for your average middle school student, but that didn't make the actual final cut. So we tried to stick pretty close to the document itself, and just give the relevant context. So.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that when we can have cocktail conversation again, that's so going to be my arsenal.
Right?
For sure. So you mentioned a glossary. That's great, because I'm thinking of so many words and terms are going to be misunderstood, like natural born. What are some other terms that you've heard that kids and even adults don't quite understand that you have to explain in that glossary?
Oh, things like a bill of attainder, ex post facto laws. I think most adults probably have ex post facto, but kids definitely don't. Corruption of blood, and letters of marque and reprisal. There's all sorts of those set phrases, I think, especially the set phrases people didn't have. And also James Madison was a fan of the passive voice, and he and I have had a discussion about this. But it really makes it hard as you're trying to cut things up into smaller pieces. And you have especially in the Electoral College, that those paragraphs are really long and complicated, and there's kind of no place to snip it. So that gave us a problem too, in terms of the language, not specifically a particular word, but just the way it was kind of wrangled together was an issue.
Sure, and I can see how your conversation about the Electoral College would be especially relevant right now. But in
questions.
Yeah. So this can be so useful for kids and adults as they're trying to navigate what's happening. And since it would be, you know, we're recording this really just shortly before the conference, so things are still, the Electoral College still is not called the election. So it's fascinating to watch, right? History being made all around us.
Well, and you think about the Ulysses S. Grant, Horace Greeley election in 1872, and Grant beat him. Grant beat him pretty solidly, but Greeley died between the period of the election and the Electoral College meeting. So then what do you do? Now that would have gotten dicier if Greeley had won. The fact that Grant definitely had won,
Yeah.
and obviously had won, and people were acting in good faith there and so on, and that made it easier. But Horace Greeley, by the way, had, in my opinion, the finest neck beard in American history. I kind of got one going with my no haircut thing here. But I think it's worth looking up a photo of him sometime, because Horace Greeley had the clean-shaven face, and then there's just rough like Elizabeth I coming out.
Wow, now that's impressive. Everyone's going to want to look that up immediately. So
here we go.
Yes, thank you for that insight.
Yeah, the important things here: James Madison's nose and Horace Greeley's neck.
Yes, I see another book in the offing here, so that's great. Thank you so much. Is there something that you feel like we really haven't touched on that you want to make sure people? You mentioned all the sidebars. I love the illustrations. Yeah, let's talk about Kirchner's illustrations, because this is not a staid document. This is the book is not something that you is lots of chunks of gray matter. There's a lot of stuff going. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, he did a really nice job.
Almost a graphic nonfiction approach there. Yeah.
Yeah, he
infographics.
I love the little states with like skinny little legs. I think those are really cute. I'm no illustrator, but I think he did a nice job. So
yeah, and the amendments, you include the amendments as well.
So. Oh yeah, and things like I think Paul, the social studies teachers will know these things. Kids right. Don't often know things like the 27th Amendment, the last one, the most recent one. Gregory Watson was 19 years old at the University of Texas and got a C on a paper and was mad about it. He had found out that the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, were originally 12. James Madison had proposed 12 amendments, and one would no longer make any sense today. But the 12th one which became the 27th Amendment, said Congress can't vote itself a pay raise, for that Congress. And Watson said that because Madison had not thought to put in a time limit, usually 7 years now, he hadn't done that. Therefore, those two were still active, and if enough states ratified them, they would become constitutional amendments. He didn't go for the one about the House of Representatives numbers, and it wouldn't work today. But his teacher gave him a C. He's mad. He starts writing the state legislatures, trying to get them to pass, to ratify the thing. And right then Congress passed itself a pay raise, and people said, you know what? And started ratifying that amendment. And because Gregory Watson got a C, because a teenager got a C on a paper and was mad about it, the 27th Amendment is part of the Constitution, which I always like to make sure kids know, my students know, because it's such a nice story of empowerment, and of ownership of government and participation in government. And also, something like 25, 30 years after she gave him the C, his teacher gave him an A. I went back and changed that grade. And that's really the important thing, right?
That's right. It's whatever grade you make. But actually, that does bring up the whole thing of unintended consequences. I love how you kind of say that you show that something was not included or was included, and that creates this thing that nobody anticipated. Like I'm thinking of the Idaho and the murder. You could commit murder.
Zone of death. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 50 square miles of Yellowstone National Park, the western part, where a person could commit a murder or any crime and not be punished for it, not go to trial, because you have to have a jury from the state and the district where the crime occurred. And you can't do that there. Nobody lives there. And the state gave up the right to try people when Yellowstone became a national park. So it officially and formally gave that up. So you couldn't try someone as a state crime, which means it's kind of a long strip, about 50 square miles, where you can't get a constitutional jury together. I always try to remind students that that doesn't mean they should commit crimes there. But Congress knows this. They have been meaning to do a thing about it for some years now and have not gotten around to it. So,
wow.
Yeah, just a strange as you say, unintended consequences. Strange.
Yeah, but created by humans, so of course it's going to be fraught with human-like error.
Well, and even the
Like
things.
a foresight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of a Frankenstein's monster that they put together, and then, I mean, a beautiful one, but then they just wind it up and push it, forward and hope it works. And things like the 1800 election with Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, you're supposed to be his vice presidential candidate, tying. I realize I'm telling you things but I apologize.
That knows, but our audience doesn't necessarily know.
Well, but somebody was supposed to not vote for vice president so that Jefferson would have one more vote than his vice presidential candidate, Aaron Burr, would. That guy didn't do it, and or there was a mix-up or something, but they wound up tying. And it gets thrown to the House of Representatives, and it took, I think, 36 votes before they decided that Jefferson did in fact get to be president. And imagine being Thomas Jefferson, standing there with your mouth hanging open, thinking, "Really, guys?" Because there was no question he was the guy running for president. But Aaron Burr, never the most ethical of folks, just decided to, make a grab for it, right?
Yeah, well, and everybody knows that story now because thank you, Alexander Hamilton.
That's right. Yes.
so the kids can probably quote from the song, isn't there?
You probably can.
The election of 1800. So yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting. It certainly has made the Constitution come alive for this generation more than anything I know of. So thank you so much for decoding it even further and explaining to us. And I learned things from this. So I know that this is something everybody can benefit from. So why don't you hold it up for us one more time so we can see it. This is the Constitution Decoded. I'm talking to Katie Kennedy, and she is a longtime a longtime teacher of American government on the college level, and has created this document for us today so that we can decode the document that our country, one of the founding documents of our country. So thank you so much.
Thank you.